Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Charles Roberts. I'm on the clinical application team here at Oculus, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's webcast, Clinical Pearls in Scleral Lens Fitting, the how and why of using the Pentacam and WAVE to improve outcomes and efficiency. Before we get started, I'd like to point out that you have a text box in your GoToWebinar screen where you can enter questions. You're welcome to enter your questions at any time, and we'll discuss them either during the presentation or at the end during the Q&A session. Our speaker tonight is Dr. David Grosswald. Dr. Grosswald studied pre-medical sciences at the University of Georgia from 1984 to 1988. He then obtained a Bachelor of Science in Physiologic Optics and earned his Doctor of Optometry from the Southern College of Optometry in 1992. After graduation, Dr. Grosswald entered practice at Gwinnett Eye until he founded the Eye Center in 1998. As the founder and director of the Eye Center, Dr. Grosswald has built a practice on referrals of challenging patients in the greater Atlanta area. He has gained extensive experience in providing specialty contact lens services, particularly with orthokeratology and scleral lens designs. The lens designs are primarily achieved via the WAVE custom contact lens system. He is a prolific WAVE designer, averaging more than 750 lenses annually, and is a frequent lecturer on custom contact lenses and practice management concepts. After many years of seeing sick patients with equally sick eyes, Dr. Grosswald made the decision to determine the root causes for many eye conditions we see daily. He's become a voracious scholar of integrative medicine and how it applies to the comprehensive management of conditions such as diabetic retinopathy, macular degeneration, and glaucoma. His goal is to promote and foster overall patient wellness to assure optimal eye health and visual function. I'm especially excited for tonight's webcast because Dr. Grosswald was one of the first practitioners beta testing the CSP software back in 2018 before its official release the following year. So without further delay, I'd like to welcome Dr. David Grosswald.
Well, thank you, Charles. Let me advance my screen here. There we go. So once again, thank you, Charles, and thank you to WAVE and Oculus for allowing me to speak tonight. I am being compensated by WAVE and Oculus. I did start my practice around 22 years ago in Conyers, Georgia. Conyers is about 18 miles outside of Atlanta. I graduated Southern College of Optometry in 1992 and worked for a well-known established practice in Atlanta. And on the weekends, I was trying to make some extra money, pay back some loans, and so I was working at a very busy Pearl franchisee. And I came to realize early on that I like to be busy. And so after a while of working for other folks, I opened up my own Pearl franchise. And that was that practice in Conyers in 1998. So we grew, added another couple of franchises, and ultimately became one of the top grossing Pearl franchisees in the country. And basically, I was fortunate enough to defranchise in 2014. Because of our high volume, we got approached by several private equity firms and ultimately did sell to Kepler in 2018. And I mention all this because I think that our growth and success has come about because of differentiating the practice. We've always tried to do whatever we did in the office a little bit better than the next super optical or private practice. And I think one of the things that really helped us differentiate our practice early on and let me see the benefits of doing things a little differently was implementing the WAVE software. So I first went to this lecture in '99 in Las Vegas and heard the very well-known Craig Norman contact lens specialist speaking about Ortho-K, and got me really excited about the concept. And so I waited in line at the podium to talk to him after his lecture and asked him, what company do I buy these contacts from? He said there's a new company called WAVE where you can customize the back surface of the lens to get much better results than some of the off-the-shelf Ortho-K designs. Called WAVE, purchased the device, and the rest is history. So I did want to give a little background about where WAVE has come from and where they're headed, and the story of how they got started. So Scott Lewis was the representative for Keratron, selling the Scout topographer, the handheld topographer. And he was at Vision Expo demoing his product. And across from him was an optometrist out of Oklahoma who has a passion for computer programming. And Dr. Jim Edwards had designed a software program to demo eyeglass frames in the office, and you know, and show them up on the screen. And so they were talking because their booths were right across from one another. And by Sunday, Jim Edwards purchased the topographer, and basically that's where the relationship started. They hatched up a plan to design contact lens software and importing the topographic data to make a custom design gas permeable contact. And so we're 500 Wave users later, and it's quite an extraordinary thing. I would definitely call us a family, sometimes a dysfunctional family, albeit a family. So we communicate daily via email, sharing ideas on how to design these lenses, practice management tips, what have you. You could go to just about any optometric trade show and you'll see a few Wave doctors in the lobby designing lenses and once again sharing ideas. So in 2020, a strategic partnership was formed between Wave and Oculus, and the good news is the team is still intact. Scott is still consulting for Wave, and you've got Chip and Vance running the operations in Florida. They brought on Sharon Ayers, who's Vice President of Sales and Marketing and very proficient in all things Pentacam. Jim Edwards. Dr. Jim Edwards is still programming and improving the Wave software. The only difference is he's got the bunch of Oculus programmers helping him out and bringing forward some really new exciting changes in the near future, I understand. Scott, I was speaking to Scott Lewis the other day. He said they had other offers, but really liked the concept of Oculus being around for 125 years and being family owned, and basically would carry on the development of Wave. He felt he owed that to the current Wave doctors. So what is Wave? Wave is a sophisticated contact lens design platform that gives a physician full control to empirically design a fully customized gas perm lens for their patients, right? So of course, scleral lenses are all the rage these days, but Wave does a lot more than just designing scleral lenses. You see in front of you the current Wave software. That's a corneal lens, and I'm going to kind of just briefly go through what we look at when we look at a Wave design. We call this middle section the Wave design window, and the green line is going to represent the cornea, and the black line is representing the contact lens. The space in between that we call the tear layer thickness. These balls right here are the control points. These are the points that you as a practitioner can actually modify. And of course, the red is the base curve and the blue is the intermediate curve. You've got the edge and the bevel control right here. In the upper right-hand corner, we have what's called the quad design window. And the upper right-hand corner is a very accurate fluorescein pattern. It's amazing how similar it's going to look to the lens at the slit lamp. Down below, of course, is just a graphical representation of the cornea, so you have it for your reference, and the back curvature represented here, and of course the front curve. So in the front curve is where we control the multifocal optics of a contact lens. You've got that's where the prism ballast is, and the anterior optic zone can be controlled there. Other things, you can see this is a right lens. You have your orientation. You can plug in the prescription, and of course it will calculate any residual over refraction, or you can plug in the over refraction that you're getting. So many more features to this Wave design window, but that's pretty much the gist of it. Okay. I'll go back here and we'll say that this white orientation mark up on the fluorescein pattern, there's 8 different meridian that you can control. So I feel that it's germane to discuss the history of how we measure the cornea and sclera and what the limitations are in designing, custom design CAD contact lenses. So, of course, we've got Placido discs, early 19th century. You've got concentric rings projected on the cornea, giving just a generalized idea of shape and maybe gross astigmatism. 1850, you have the ophthalmometer, and that's what the B&L keratometer is fashioned after. And of course, they're looking at the size of the image, the Myers, over the size of the object, the cornea. And of course, it's only giving you a couple of data points, steep and flat, in the central 3 to 5 millimeters. That's what most autorefractors, of course, are using. In the 80s, we've got the advent of computers and digital video keratoscopes. It's going to measure slope and compute curvature and calculate the elevation and shape, but of course, it's just a calculation and not a true elevation. And of course, the majority of systems in use to now are these Placido disc-based systems. So some of the limitations of Placido disc, if the line of sight measurement axis of the topographer are not the same, right? That's angle kappa. And be it angle kappa errors, or if the patient's just not fixating properly, you can see up here, you can get a pseudokeratoconus. Whoops, you can get a pseudokeratoconus. And of course, if you were to design, two different wave lenses for the same cornea, you're going to come up with two very different outcomes. Also, you've got a dependency upon a good tear film for accurate measurements. We know with these Placido disc reflections, the nose or the eyelashes or eyelids can get in the way. We've got corneal defects or just dry eyes, too much meibum in the tear film, and all that's going to affect the outcome of the topography and therefore the outcome of your lens design. So errors are often created when you use central data to derive the peripheral measurements. In the picture here, the orange arrows, now you can barely see it, but that's what they're pointing to is more rings. They're less prominent and harder to see, but those rings are the calculated, extrapolated data for the rest of the cornea and the sclera. And of course, it's just sometimes impressively accurate guesswork, but it is indeed guesswork. In the topography on the right, you can see the angle kappa measurement error where the whole topography seems scooted over to the right there. And all of this does affect the outcome. So the Scheimpflug Principal answers, why the Placido disc, why the Placido disc topographies are not accurate. What you're seeing in the middle picture, of course, is a highway that's nice and clear. And if the focus plane of the camera is not perpendicular to the image that you're photographing, then things are going to be out of focus. And that's what we get with Placido disc, right? So the center of the cornea, where we're starting with the data, is going to be the most accurate, and the peripheral data is like the top and bottom of the highway photo right there. So the Pentacam, of course, is using a Scheimpflug camera, and it uses a rotating camera with an optical slit that's measuring the tomography of the cornea and the sclera, giving us much better data. So of course, here's a picture of the Pentacam and or one of the Oculus devices, and basically just highlighting once again that we have fewer errors because of nose and eyelid shadows and poor wetting corneas. So much better data. So how are scleral lenses fitted? So basically, using the set of diagnostic trial lenses is the way I always did it, trial and error. That picture up above, I'm sure everyone's got the same cabinet in their office where they purchase one fitting set after another. We still use the fitting sets just so when I've got someone with irregular astigmatism and a poor end refraction, I've got at least a base curve, a power, and an over refraction to get the first lens closer to a perfect visual endpoint. So of course there's custom molded from impressions of the eye shape. We implemented the iPrint Pro system this year and absolutely do love it. I wish it was affordable for every single patient, but the fact is it is much more costly technology for the patient. So using corneal topographers that measure the cornea, then extrapolate and estimate the scleral profile, and that's kind of what we're talking about with the current wave systems using the Medmont or the Scout topographer. That's exactly what it's doing. And as I said before, it's amazing how many patients we have pleased with that system. But with the Pentacam, we're doing it more efficiently, fewer remakes, and fewer office visits. And of course, that's what we're talking about next: the advanced diagnostic devices that can accurately measure the map of the scleral profile. So the next picture here is actually one of the many screens from the Pentacam. And the first thing I'd like to highlight is that there are wonderful new devices. It's amazing the new technology that's coming forward that allows you to make scleral lenses and mapping the scleral data. But the Pentacam offers so much more than just a picture of the sclera. So, and this picture kind of highlights that. We manage, quite a few keratocones in the office. And these days, if you don't, with the advent of cross-linking, you can't have an intelligent conversation with your patients, whether they need it or they're stable after their cross-linking, if you don't have the posterior float. So this picture over here to the right bottom is an elevation map. It's actually a best fit sphere showing you the elevation of the back curvature of the cornea, the back float. And the picture up above, of course, is the same thing, only the front surface of the cornea. So it's the elevation of the front of the eye. And in subsequent visits, when the patients come back in the future, you can track these patients and create a difference map of the back curvature of the cornea. And these are features that you just can't do with some of the other scleral measuring devices. The upper left-hand corner, of course, is a sagittal, the front curvature, a curvature map, I should say, of the front. And below that is a tomography-driven pachymetry map showing the thickness of the cornea throughout. So, so one of the things I do love about the Pentacam software, again, throughout the software, you've got these cheat sheets, if you will, these balloons that kind of blow up and explain the concept. So very helpful, explaining to you what an elevation map is and best fit sphere map. So what we're going to do is go through and design a Wave Scleral using that CSP data. So we've got this drop down right here, and we choose the CSP report. And this is what the CSP report looks like. Over on the left-hand side, you can see 360 degrees around, we've got the corneal scleral profile. And in the middle, you see it's gray. That corresponds to the coverage map over here to the right, showing you the gray area right there that represents the cornea. And anything outside the gray area in the periphery, obviously, is a scleral. Color-coded so that the purple matches up with the temporal and the red matches up with the inferior, et cetera, et cetera. Over to the right, you've got, once again, an elevation map of the cornea and a best fit sphere for the sclera as well. So you've got the two different elevation maps based on a different radius of curvature. And you're able to, let's go up here and show you what all this wonderful stuff is right here, okay? So we have the bulbar slope showing you, of course, it's defined down here. Basically, that's the angle at the limbus, and showing you the flat and the steep areas. And of course, defining what sagittal height is, right? So we've got you choose a certain chord. You can see up here, it's 15.5 millimeter. So if that's the desired overall diameter, you want to know what's happening out at that landing zone right there. And what you're seeing here, the sag height flat and the sag height steep up in this upper right-hand box, it's showing you the flattest and steepest area on the sclera. And of course, the next box, the sag height astigmatism, is going to be the difference. So this is not that great of a difference compared to what we're seeing now that I have this data. You can have up to, I've seen patients with 1,000 microns or 1 millimeter of difference between their flat and steep area in the sclera. And this, of course, now we have a much better understanding of how, in a situation like that, that scleral lens is just pressing on the goblet cells and producing that mucin that climbs down the surface or the back surface of the contact lens come later in the day. And this helps me decide right from the get-go, do I leave this patient in their, their rotationally symmetrical scleral lens I've had them in for years, or do I need to jump to something like the Wave or something more advanced like impression technology? I shouldn't say advanced, something more complex when they have such a great asymmetry. All right, so that's the corneal scleral profile data. And what we're going to do now is activate the Wave software. So once you have the Wave software installed, you just basically, you can't see it, but there's a Wave software button Apologize for the wonky mouse here. But basically, this is what happens. You hit the Wave button, and it opens the Wave software. Now, what it says right here is, do you want to pick up the first design I designed for this patient, or jump into a new design? So we're going to jump into a new design. It asks what I'd like to start with the previous design and modify from there, or start over. I'm going to start over because we're showing you from the beginning. And what happens here, I've just cut out some of the what happens behind the scenes here, because it takes some time to download. It takes a minute or so to download all this. But basically, Wave imports the topographical data and comes up with a starting lens, okay? And it just has a default of a 10.0 diameter lens. You could put in your eyeglass refraction, but like most cones, I don't have good data here. So we're going to go down to the tools box here. There's several tools in here, but one of the tools is we're going to input the trial lens data. So here I put in the base curve of the diagnostic lens, be it a scleral or a gas perm if I had one to put on the patient. And you put that data in there, and then you put in the power of that diagnostic lens. And then if there's any over refraction, you can plug that over refraction in, even include cylinder, okay? And then you go to the tools button once again. It used to be that we would have to set the diameter and set all of the data points up there and click up and down to get the desired results that I'm showing you. But Jim has worked tirelessly to pretty much give the Wave doctors what they were begging for once we all came up with designs that were working nicely. So we've got corneal scleral button, and after you press that button, it automatically loads the corneal diameter. And what I found most successful is to start with a lens about 2.5 to 3.0 greater than HVID. And sure enough, that's exactly what the software defaults to. You choose your vault that you desire, hit the OK button, and again, the software goes to work designing the contact lens based on the values you put in there. There's a button, a red dot in the upper left-hand corner, and that will stay red until Wave is done calculating the contact lens. And again, I kind of cheated, and once again, it takes about a minute or so. So through the magic of video, there's the design lens, right? And that's the way the lens looks. You can see in the Wave design window, as I said before, the green line representing the eye, and the black line is a representation of the surface of the contact lens. If you click if you go over to the fluorescein pattern and click around, of course, that shape of the lens is going to change as the tear layer thickness changes based on the shape of the cornea relative to the contact lens. Again, all of these data points are very, you can manipulate them all. This right here is, you can set your center thickness, and this lens is a plus 790, so you can see it's rather thick. I didn't highlight this area, but you could hit the edge button at the very bottom, and it would magnify the edge. Looking at the analysis of the cornea, the graphical analysis of the cornea and the lens down below, you can see where the cornea, which is gray, turns white. And of course, that's where you're looking at the sclera, okay? Front surface optics are maximized and changes as the base curve of the contact lens changes to maximize the best possible vision. So that happens automatically. We're here on looking at the quad design at the front surface. And what I just did is I just reduced the anterior optic zone. Those are those green data points, those green control points on the front surface. And by making the anterior optic zone a little bit smaller, we've been able to make that plus 790 lens thinner. I just clicked on the refraction box, and I can go in here and put in an add power. I get to choose near center or center distance. Most often with a scleral stable lens, you're going to do a near center lens, and you get to set the pupil size based on the patient's pupil. You'll see that the front surface now looks different. The near center, you can see it's more curved in the very center of the contact lens. And you might have noticed that the center thickness has increased ever so slightly because we've added plus in the middle. Again, that's where the red dots right there, we're controlling pupil size because you want a smaller pupil on the near center. And that's pretty much the way the lens is designed. Again, Many docs who have used WAVE in the past may look at this and say, boy, this is a whole lot simpler than it used to be, and it truly is. We get to dictate hash marks and what color you want the lens, what materials you'd like to use, hydropeg. I'm putting a note in for the lab that I'd like the hash marks painted black so my patient can orient the lens properly, since these are specific to 8 different meridians, and it's going to be important that the lens is placed on properly, especially if we choose a front surface, toric, multifocal, et cetera, okay? Test lens, that's a little clinical notes for myself later. And whoops, well, what you didn't get to see is at the very end, you hit the order button. My lab, there's a couple of labs in the United States that produce these lenses, and my lab happens to be right in Atlanta. Compared to some of the other manufacturers, if I order my lens by 11 a.m. in the morning, I generally have it the next business day, and which is just fantastic for custom design contact lenses. Our patients are paying a premium, and that's just part of better customer service. So, so what I'm going to show you here is a fit comparison using the CSP Wave software and Wave lens design versus the old version using the Scout topographer, the Placido derived Wave lens, okay? So this is a patient who had been wearing synergized contacts for years, and she came in and we fit her in Wave lenses, and she absolutely loved them. But did come in, at this year and reported that her 2018 contact lenses sometimes created, some irritation upon removal. Her eyes stayed very red, and her family members, coworkers would constantly comment on it. And you can see, that, she was pretty successful in it, but when I look back at the design, I realized, boy, we could do better. So now you can see with one lens design, we've got a lens that's just vaulting beautifully, much better alignment. We're not touching the limbus whatsoever. And we are not seeing our patients back as often with, or giving them the option, I should say. So we did not see her back in follow-up because of COVID and how busy we are and trying to keep people out of the office. But we reached out to her, and she was just wowed at how much more comfortable and how much wider her eyes are by the end of the day. And again, this was with one lens, one pair of lenses. So really excited about the new technology. And again, Scleral lenses are very, very forgiving. She was absolutely thrilled with her previous lenses and didn't think they could be improved. So, okay, here we are. So I did want to highlight as well, and again accentuate the fact that in order to change data points on the Wave design window in an area like this was very achievable. It just took some work, and you had to kind of understand the concept. But Dr. Edwards has just built in some wonderful artificial intelligence here that just really is an incredible time saver for these patients. This is a patient that was referred to me by a friend, an optometrist who runs a dry eye clinic at a very large ophthalmology clinic in Atlanta. And he just had done everything he could for her to mitigate her dry eye symptoms and suggested she come out and try scleral lenses. So the first lens the first lens on the left, you can see we've got some hypertrophy there of the limbal epithelium. You're looking at the left eye nasal area there. And she was reporting overall improvement with her dry eye symptoms, but still was lamenting the red eyes and the irritation later in the day, and sometimes wasn't able to get to a full day's wear. And we did remove the lenses, and sure enough, she had some staining, at 3 and 9 o'clock on the right there at the limbus. So the next slide, I wanted to show you the built-in adjustments that are now available. So I'm going to draw this here. Okay. So I just wanted to because it gets a little confusing, but what you're looking at, I'm trying to show you the orientation. This is a left lens, as it says, big red L at the bottom of the screen. And the fluorescein pattern in the upper right-hand corner, again, you show the white line is a left eye, and it's showing you the temporal side. But you can adjust that and go to different meridians And now, if you look at the orientation at the bottom, it's still a left eye, but now it's showing you the superior, right? So I like to work in just one meridian and just keep it there, so I've got it mentally organized in my head. But we're going to be, right, looking at that area right there. So, I'm sorry, whoops. So sorry, folks. So let me see here. Let me drag this here. Okay, I got control back. Alrighty, so basically, as you click around, let me get back to my place. So here we are. We're going to measure the height right here. So of course, when you look at that OCT, or if you're using, you know, good skills with your slit lamp and fluorescein patterns, which is very achievable. But basically, you're looking at this area here. And what we saw in the OCT is that this is not exactly how it worked out, right? The sclera is covered by some very boggy conjunctiva, and those are just some limitations that we have to deal with. But we've got some great controls to go in there and fix this. So if you look at the area, what you're going to do is look at the area between the pink dot and the blue dot. The pink dot is basically where the landing zone generally starts, and the blue dot is basically, as I called it before, the intermediate zone. But when we're talking about scleral lenses, I kind of tell docs, think of this as the area where the contact lens starts to descend to the eye, right? So basically, if you look at that area and kind of measure, that's what we're looking at. So we've got, you know, 41 microns, and you can kind of go look at your OCT image and try and just guesstimate how much you want to increase that. So there we go. So once again, we go to the Tools button, and under the Corneal Scleral button, where we originally designed the lens, instead of creating a lens, we're going to go and now modify. So you can see you can modify the central vault if you're too close to the cornea, or if you need to decrease the vault when it's more than expected. You can modify the limbal clearance and the alignment angle. Of course, we're talking about the limbal clearance here. So I'm going to get through that question, but this is the window that comes up. So first, you kind of are going to decide we're going to increase, and you click that button. So we'll click the increase button. And the next thing you do is come over here to the amount that you want to increase. So your choices are 0, 20, 40, and 60. It lets you choose. You can see the area of selection, and it's asking you, do you want to change all 8 meridians at one time? Or do you want to only go and affect 1/2 of the contact lens? And you see the 1/2 where it's highlighted very green in the middle and a little bit less lime green and up at the oblique meridians there. So it's going to adjust 60 microns of increase at the horizontal meridian, but at the 2 meridians adjacent to that, it's only going to affect things about 30 microns. If you wanted to affect it 60 at all 3 areas, then you have to do it individually, okay? But basically some neat time-saving controls in there. 1 meridian at a time, and then, okay, so hit the apply button, and there we go again. Let me just get to the end of this. There we go. And you can see the change that occurs. I'm trying to do too many things at one time, but hopefully you can see the change on the nasal side relative to the temporal side. And once again, this is exactly what I did with this patient, and that's the end result. And once again, 2 lenses, and she's very, very happy, and far fewer complaints about her dry eyes. So, okay. So let's talk about the numbers and how WAVE has impacted my business. As I said before, I think being a true contact lens specialist, you know, a lot of docs hold themselves out as contact lens specialists. I think that I've heard, and I used to think that not to discredit the contact lens manufacturers' telephone representatives, the consultants on the phone, they certainly are indispensable, but once you get proficient in WAVE, you'll find that you will need them far less. We hit a milestone this year at our practice. We hit the 4 million mark in 2019. So I'm going to brag about 2019 instead of our interrupted 2020. We're on track to do more WAVE business this year, but of course COVID has put a little bit of a kink in that. But we have done about 800 WAVE patients this year. The internet order status system is WAVE's your access to ordering lenses and keeping track of your orders. But so you can see just by running a quick report, around 800 lenses. This does include sclerals, ortho-Ks, any replacement contact lenses. But when I look at the net profits from just scleral fits and lenses, we netted around $160,000. That does not include any of our ortho-K patients, nor does it include any replacement lenses or the eye exams associated with these patients, topographies, visits like that. So it's a significant part of our business. These patients become residual. Especially if they have medically necessary, they just return each year for their benefit. And of course, these patients, once you change your life, then of course they refer their friends and family, as you well know. So this is kind of where we do it. This is our building, and we've got a staff of around 20 wonderful people who, many of them have been with me for 20 years. The picture in the upper right is our special testing room. Where you can see we cram a lot of stuff in a small space. We've got the Aiden in there, and the Oculus visual field, and the OCT, and of course the Pentacam. The bottom left is our contact lens room. So we've got a couple of tables where we do insertion and removals, and you'll see a autorefractor and slit lamp. The staff member will check for bubbles and make sure the lens is oriented properly upon insertion. And got our pre-test area, and of course the main dispensary there. So Sharon wanted me to talk a little bit about how I market my scleral lens business, and I think this precision keratoconus, some of you may have this. This is a service that a company provides, and basically they utilize search engine optimization. If a patient searches anywhere in my region for keratoconus or intacs or cross-linking, scleral lenses, you name it, we are branded as the expert, right? And it's got a dedicated phone number and email. And basically, when we get the email or a phone call, which is recorded, so I get to listen to the recordings when they call it my office, we know that this is one of these precision keratoconus leads. And what we do in our office is we invite these patients in for a no-charge consultation. Yes, we'll get their insurance ahead of time, but we make sure they understand that there's not going to be a charge for this visit. Try and acquire their old records. When it's an email that I get, I actually will call the patient myself and get a brief idea of what their journey has been with scleral contact lenses. And for the most part, it's quite effective at getting the patient to come in our office. And so basically, great Google reviews and professional videos on our website of patients talking favorably about us. I know I'm running out of time, but I do want to show you what we use for internal marketing. This is Evernote, and it's an internal notebook that all the staff uses. I've got this on a particular notebook for medically necessary for Davis Vision, for example. And so I've got all the rules for all the companies, and all of our vendors are in there. But when the folks came from Oculus to do the beta testing, they just thought this was amazing the way we were marketing the technology. So this is like a little patient education thing I pull up to show the patients what we're doing differently. And there's your scleral, I tell them this is the German engineers who came to see how we're fitting the lenses. That's the owner of the company down there. This is, of course, how we're making your lens differently than the last place did it, and why we're better. Okay. Finally, the dispense visit. We schedule the patient with a staff member for the IRNR training. We discuss the patient at the morning huddle. Perhaps during the diagnostic fit, my scribe would have written in the order notes that this patient's very apprehensive and it's going to take a good while. Our dispense kit, we will actually charge patients who have medically necessary, but if they're cash pay, we give them their initial kit. The staff will do a slit lamp evaluation for the lens orientation, air bubbles, autorefraction. They do the anterior segment OCT, and of course Rusty is the autorefraction because it's an old unit. In the exam room, I refine the autorefraction, we video the fluorescein pattern so we can show the patient, and we review, pull up the wave design window and the OCT in front of the patient and family members, because you can actually troubleshoot right then and there, right? And it's just really impressive. And you know, instead of you calling a company and saying, you design the lenses for me. Then we'd walk the patient out. I like to walk the patient out for their first view of the outdoors, and the staff, of course, will take over and do the what we call the polarized sunglass show. And generally, we will give a significant discount when they purchase polarized sunglass lenses that day. That's when we schedule the follow-up and ask for a good review while they're very happy. And that's about it. I appreciate everyone attending, and I think we just have a few more minutes for some questions.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Grosswald. We do have a few questions from the audience ready. I just wanted to remind everyone, on your GoToWebinar screen, there is a text box, so you can enter questions that you have still. If you missed part of the webinar, or if there's anything from tonight's presentation you'd like to review, you will receive a link to the recording in the next few days. So our first question is, how closely do the sag values and slope values from the scleral data need to match the sag values and slope values from the lens?
That's a very good question. And to be honest with you, I guess because I've been designing waves for so long, I've not paid particular close attention to that, right? So I let the software design the lens and really go by what I'm seeing with the slit lamp and the values on the, the image that we're seeing on the OCT, and just kind of modify from there. So I've not really looked at the bulbar slope to see if it matches up and makes sense with the edge angle and things like that, if that's what you're asking.
Right, I think that's what he's asking, because those are the values you see on the CSP report, but I guess when you import the data into Wave, you don't necessarily look at those as close. So,
right.
Yeah. So our next question is, with Wave, how do you address a pinguecula?
Sure. So with Wave, I'll be very frank with you. If it's a mild pinguecula, then we generally will vault over. The Pentacam design lenses are doing a better job of making allowances for that. It will change the sag value at that area. I do fit sometimes a ScanFit Pro lens, and because there are more meridian, of course, that's why the lenses are more expensive, because there's more lathe work being done, that sometimes I will have to go to another design when it's a very large pinguecula. I've been fitting the Wave lenses with pingueculas for quite a while. There's quite, just vaulting it, a larger diameter lens, so it's very, very achievable. But if it's a very large pinguecula, jumping into some of the other technologies has been beneficial. I had a talk with Jim, and there are changes coming that might just address that in the future, but I won't speak to that. I can't be sure of that.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, on average, how many visits do you save using the CSP versus empirical fitting with a diagnostic set?
So over the years, at the very beginning, boy, because Wave gives you, as a certified Wave designer, you get 4 lenses before you get charged all over again, right? And so over the last several years, I can think of 1 or 2 times where I've had to jump into a 5th revision and pay again. And so with the Pentacam software, yeah, we're reducing it most often to about 2 lenses. I'm very persnickety, and just for a few extra bucks, I don't mind doing a 3rd lens, but it's usually me making the 3rd and 4th lens, because I'm adding a little bit of front surface toricity, or the lens might have rotated a little bit more. And once again, the rotational stability with Pentacam is far better than the Placido based topographies, where I was making it guesstimating where the scleral curvature was, and just basically making it more, a steeper slope at 12 and 6, and letting the lens rotate. But still, there was a great deal of unpredictability. They'd come back a week later and rotate somewhere different. So with all that said, usually, 1 set to 2 sets.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, we did have a question about how often or how many lenses does it usually take. So I think you answered that as well. Our next question is, how often do you use HydraPeg?
So for sclerals, I use it every time. It's funny, I've talked to a lot of my buddies who are who fit lots of lenses, and some just cannot stand it. You know why I started using it exclusively? Because to get the silicone oil or whatever it is that has to be cleaned off the contact lens, you put on, it doesn't matter if it's gas perm or scleral, they put the lenses on, they go through their insertion and training session, and they wait 20 minutes to see me because I'm backed up, and you get them in the exam chair and their arms are folded and they're mad because they cannot see because there's an oil slick. And then I've got to take the lens out, and we're busy, and I haven't got time to do that. So I don't see too many drawbacks. It is more slippery for someone who's never worn a scleral lens. If they put it in quickly, the slipperiness makes the saline jump out of the contact lens. So you have to modify the way you teach people to put the lens in. Otherwise, you're going to get more air bubbles. But all that is overcomable, right?
Okay, great, thank you. Our next question is, do you use prism if there's too much predicted cylinder?
So once you know with the Pentacam, once you know the sag value, at the specific chord, the overall diameter, right then and there, based on the difference, if it's going to fit like a Pringle potato chip on top of a Pringle potato chip, or if there's a great deal of symmetry out in the periphery, in which case I will use a prism ballast, and I think HydraPeg makes a difference for that lens to return, to its for the prism to return to the bottom. But again, I'm using far less prism with the Pentacam derived lens than I use with the corneal data extrapolated out onto the sclera.
Okay, thank you.
And I will say, Charles, that it will not affect comfort. So I cannot remember a time where I added prism and someone reflected that it changed the comfort of the contact lens.
Okay, great. Yeah, we do get that question from time to time. Another question that we have here that we actually get quite a bit is how long should patients stay out of their current scleral lenses to get an accurate CSP report or scan?
Right. It's funny, this just came up on one of the Scleral Facebook page questions, and I do know after getting iPrint Pro, and this is because I never evaluated. I mean, heck, in my mind, I was going to just have the patient take the lens out as soon as I got there, and we wouldn't get Pentacam data till after the exam. And in my mind, that was good enough. But truly, it's not. Right? I mean, you can see the scleral indentation. But to have people come out of their lenses for 48 hours is tough. So what I was about to get at is that Dr. Sent, who designed the iPrint Pro and has got much more knowledge in this area, insists that you must stay out of the lens for 48 hours. But again, the sclera is very forgiving, and these are not patients with tube shunts and things like that. So we're having success just having them stay out of the lens for an hour, but if you want to do it right, have them stay out of the lens the day before, 2 days before.
Okay. And I guess kind of relating to our question that we just had, can you, how do you fix lens rotational issues?
Well, with the prism ballast, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, again, it didn't happen a great deal, but when it happens, it's really frustrating, and you're chasing your tail with a front surface toric lens. But adding the prism ballast and making sure that you're just not too tight in the periphery, and otherwise upgrading your technology.
Okay. Thank you. I guess we're a little bit over time, so we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. So, do you ever use a trial lens set still?
Yes, I do. Ken Maller has done some great discussions on for Oculus, and one of the lectures he did in January, it's funny. He said he said these lenses you nail it almost the first time, so I might start fitting the lens, doing putting the diagnostic lens on first, because he was nailing the fit but not getting the power right. Again, we're too busy. I don't want to see my patients anymore, and they're busy. They don't want to come in. So I do put a diagnostic lens on all my irregular corneas to get the best possible power outcome at the first visit. It's a wow factor. You'll see your patients cry. I think it's great for practice management, is my point. If someone's got a 20/20 endpoint, then the Wave software is incredibly accurate at nailing that refraction. So it's not needed.
Okay. So I guess we have time for one more, and I'll finish with a really easy one. We have a lot of people asking, how do I get started with Wave, and what's the best way to, or who do I contact?
Okay, you want me to answer that question? So, I'm guessing, because y'all have had some changes, I'm guessing that would be to call the Wave office and speak to Sharon. Am I correct?
That's correct, yeah. And everyone who was on this, we'll send everybody an email with information on that who attended and registered for the webinar. So.
Yep.
So I guess that's all the time we have tonight. So thanks everyone who's sending questions, and thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Grosswald, and
thank you. I appreciate everyone attending.
Yeah, so this concludes our presentation, and on behalf of Oculus, everybody have a good night. Thanks.
Thank you.